Hi guys. So today in this session, we are going to discuss a very important theme in sociology. That's your chapter 7, power elite, sociological theories revolving around that. So we are in the chapter 7. Okay. So when we talk about power is very much central to your social life. Whenever we talk about family, workplace, political parties, caste groups, religious institutions, or global relations, power determines who gets what and when and how. So today what we'll do is we'll break down this topic in a very simple exam-oriented manner, and we'll cover the classical theory, functionalist theory, conflict theory, elite theory, and the pluralist perspectives. But let me tell you, this is a quick discussion. It's a revision. The actual class has been over, so you already have enough content, and I've given the PDF also. With that, you have already completed, and then plus you need to take it as a revision. So we have seen this power when we discuss thinkers, when we discuss stratification, right? So when we discussed even work and economic life, so the last 3 chapters we have seen this in detail. So here this is a separate chapter. Now remember, the same in Indian context will be there in your paper 2 also. So majority of the concepts that you are learning here will be coming as such politics and society in Indian society, and then later we'll be seeing social movements. So in this chapter here, you'll be seeing a topic revolution, collective action, etc. So that I will connect it with social movement. So that's how the preparation will be done, right? That's exactly how the classes have been taken. But here, when we are revising, we'll take a topic by topic and we'll cover it in just 10-15 minutes like that. So let's understand what you mean by power in sociology. Sociologically, power refers to the ability of individuals or groups to carry out their will even against the resistance or disagreement of others. So other people are not in agreement with you, but still you can carry out your will, your wish, whatever you want, you can do, irrespective of what other people think or do. Max Weber gives a beautiful definition in Economy and Society 1922. He says, power is the chance of men to realize their own will in a communal action, even against the will of others. So you can exercise what you want, even against the others, even if they don't want that to happen. So that definition, if you look at, there are 2 key ideas, right? Power is relational with respect to other person, and power can operate even without consent also. So when we talk about power, authority is different. We have seen that authority, different ideal types of authority. So power is broad, right? Power is relational, and power can operate even without consent. So forceful, it can be with coercion also. But when we talk about authority, that is the power that is accepted as legitimate. That derives from law, constitution, or agreements like that. So authority and power, authority, when we talk about, that's legitimate. Power can be legitimate as well as coercive. So power is relational. It can operate even without consent. So at the broadest level, power can take 2 forms. One, coercion, that's based on force. The other is authority. That is something which is accepted as legitimate. Cool. Now let's go to Weberian view of power. So what Weber thought is, power is a zero-sum game. Now remember this. I have used this in essay also, this concept. So this, you need to understand what is Weberian concept, what is Parsonian concepts, etc. So Weber believed that it's a zero-sum game. That means if one person exercises power, someone else must lose it. And power is not equally distributed. It is linked to economic class, status, and party. So he identified there are 3 bases of power: tradition, charisma, legal rational authority. So you can connect this with the previous discussion which we have done on this chapter, and in thinkers also we have covered these authorities, right? Bureaucracy also we have covered. I think it is repeating here also once again. So if you look at it in this sense, see, power becomes an essential part of stratification in the modern societies. So 3 bases of power: traditional authority, charismatic authority, rational legal authority. Cool. Now, next is functionalist view of power. So functionalists do not see power as coercive. They see power as something that exists for the collective goods. So it is variable sum game. The other one, zero sum game. Here it is variable sum game. So Parsons believed power is a variable sum game. As society progresses, collective welfare increases. So what will happen? The overall power capacity of society also increases. So it is actually indicating that society is progressing. So power help in achieving collective goals of society. So when achieving collective goals of society, society also getting developed. So more the power in a society, more developed will be the society, or more developed will be the society, more power it will have. There is no permanent winners or losers according to this perspective. Instead, society cooperates through institutions. For example, if you see government power is legitimized because it works for collective welfare, right? Different social positions are created not to dominate, but to achieve societal goals effectively. Even when we talk about stratification, the different positions functionally more important, they fulfill vital needs for the functioning of society. So power is variable sum game. It is not zero sum game. It is a collectivity who's getting benefit out of it. The stratification is beneficial for society. This power is also beneficial for society. More power a society have if the society is more developed. Less power a society have if the society is least developed. Cool. So that's the fundamental difference, and these are the two important ideas you need to know. Apart from that, Marxian view we already discussed in Marx as well as here also. So see, Marxists see power as rooted in economic control. Power is part of superstructure, or this will comes under superstructure. If you are powerful in economic infrastructure, you'll be powerful elsewhere also. So the ruling class, they exercise the power over working class through coercion. And power is not legitimate, it is something which is imposed. And if you're strong, if you are the owners of production, you get that power. So power extends beyond institutions, and it comes from control over the economic infrastructure. If you have control over the economic infrastructure, that shapes the superstructure where you will be powerful, whether it is religious institutions, whether it's educational institutions or the state or whatever, political institution, the ideology. That's what the false consciousness also he is discussing, right? So false consciousness actually blinds the working class from seeing exploitation. So the only way to change, according to Marx, is revolution, and that lead to communal ownership of the forces of production, socialist society or a communist society. I'm not getting into the details of that. You know this, and I just need to give you a framework on how you're going to present this answer. I hope that's done. Cool. Now the next one, Michael Mann on power. Okay, see, Michael Mann provide a very sophisticated multi-dimensional view. He says power comes from overlapping socio-spatial networks, and he identified there are four sources of power. You need to write exactly the same. So four sources of power: ideological power, economic power, political power, military power. And he also distinguished between extensive power and intensive power. Extensive power is the reach of power. Intensive power is the impact of power. So the to what extent it will reach, to what extent it can impact. And finally, he's also talking about authoritative power, which is deliberate and strategic, and diffuse power, which is like the routine, spontaneous power. So in modern globalized power, in the modern globalized scenario, right, the transitional, this setup, the multinational companies, they exercise significant, the transnational companies, not multinational companies, transnational companies, I can say, they exercise significant power. Multinational companies also in that context. Cool. Now the next one, French and Raven, they gave 5 bases of power. So French and Raven actually proposed a very popular classification, and that's used very frequently in management and also in sociology. So you should be knowing this: legitimate power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, referent power. Remember this, write it. If you get in general question related to power, talk about Weber, talk about Parsons, bring in the Michael Mann, bring in this also. So you need to bring in multiple perspectives, and later elite theorist also you need to bring in. So legitimate power comes from official position or authority. Reward power, that comes because of ability to give benefits, incentives like that. And the coercive power, that's the ability to punish. The expert power, that is based on your skill, your competence. And the referent power, that's based on, that word itself will tell you, the respect, admiration, personal attributes like that. So later they have added one more also, that's the sixth one, that is informational power. Modern society, information is the power. So this will actually help you to understand the power dynamics at workplace, family, politics, right? So that's how this one is about. Next, let's look at elite theories. Okay, see, that's the most exam relevant topic, the power elite theories, right? So what they argue is society is divided into a small ruling minority and a large ruled majority. So minority who's ruling the large ruled majority, right? So this ruling, this is the one who's ruled, this is large, this is very small minority. There are two broad traditions. Here we need to discuss classical elite theories, that is by Pareto and Mosca, and pluralist elite theories, Robert Dahl, Hunter, Mills. So Mills is critical of pluralism, but we can bring in here anyway. So these are 5 names that I want to refer it to. Guys, here I'll quickly go through that, but in the actual class, we have covered it in detail. The PDF also you need to refer. Don't take this lecture standalone to this particular topic. We are just looking at this discussion as a revision session. I hope that part is very clear. Now let's start with Pareto Moscow. Wilfred Pareto in Mind and Society 1935. This is a classical elite theory. So he believed society is always ruled by a minority elite. And this elite rule is inevitable. And this elite differ from masses due to their superior personal qualities. So those who have that superior personal qualities, they will come as the rulers and they are minority, and this is inevitable. And Pareto identified there are 2 types of elites. There are lions and foxes. Lions, as its name indicate, rule by brute force, the stability, right? Foxes rule by cunning manipulation, that way. So 2 types is what he wanted to mention. So lions with a brute force, rule by force and stability. Foxes rule by cunningness, manipulation, like that. So what will happen is these 2 groups constantly replace each other through the process called as circulation of elites. So they can ask you what is circulation of elite also. And Pareto also criticized this Marx idea. What he said is, even in communism, a section of ruling elite will emerge. So it won't be like that. So this lions will be replaced with foxes, and the foxes will be replaced with lions later, right? So this lions may be beaten by foxes because of their manipulation, cunningness, and this keep on circulating. That's what circulation of elites. Now Mosca. Okay, got to know Mosca. 1896, the ruling class. See, what he argued is elite rule is universal and is inevitable. So both of them are saying it is universal. The fact that it is existing everywhere, that itself is telling that it is inevitable also. So every society have a minority who is the ruling class, and every society have the majority who is the ruled masses. So elite ruling class and the majority ruling or ruled masses. Okay, so again, democracy is also a form of elite rule because a minority is ruling the majority, who's the ruled one, right? So if you look at the difference between Mosca and Pareto in this context, Mosca believed elite qualities may change from one era to another. So that's the main difference. Pareto mainly talking about personal qualities like that. So representation in democracies that allows some voices of lower strata, this reservations and all those, but still who's dominating? The elites dominate in the decision making. Some representation will be there, right, from the lower strata. The voices will be raised, but that's not ultimately what matter. Now, guys, let me discuss CWrightMills also, the power elite. Mill, in fact, focused on American society, and he argued power in US is held by 3 dominant institutions. What are that? Military, corporations, and federal government. So this group form a power elite. This is cohesive, interconnected, and socially similar also. Military, corporations, large MNCs, and federal government. So the examples that he gave us, the unilateral bomb decisions in World War II, interlocking directorates, right? And then similar class backgrounds. So he basically opposed the idea that democracies are open for all and fair. No, there is nothing like that. There is a elite section which is going on, which is with this dominant institutions, and they exercise power, and that's unilateral. Apart from that, the pluralist thesis is there that is related to community power. So they challenge the elite theorists. So what pluralists argue is power is not concentrated. It is dispersed among multiple groups. So it's not concentrated. It's dispersed among different multiple groups. And modern industrial society is complex because you have power with the trade union. You have pressure groups, they have the power. You have professional associations, they have the power. Political parties have power. So these are different groups and the power is dispersed. And government becomes a broker between these competing groups. And Raymond Aron summarizes this as government becomes a business of compromise. I repeat, Raymond Aron summarizes that the government becomes a business of compromise. Okay, so competition, compromise, and everything. Now, coming to Robert Dahl in his book Who Governs 1961, what he found is no single group dominate decision making. So again, politics is about bargaining between groups, bargaining, negotiations, acceptance, compromises, right? So economic factors are not the only basis of power. Multiple centers of power exist in modern democracies, and the pluralists give multiple examples like multi-party democracies are there, coalition politics. All these are showing what the pluralism, and between them bargaining is there, negotiations is there, compromises are there, coalition politics is there, voter behavior, in fact limiting that elite power, and multi-party democracy is also indicating the same. So again, pluralism is also criticized because they ignore power of non-decision, the elite avoid discussing mainly the threatening issues, right? So again, the other criticism what we have given is that this setup is is a failure to address unequal resources, to the access groups, and then assume equal opportunity of participation. So these are not reality. So guys, these are the things that we need to remember here. This is what the quick revision is all about. So what Weber said, it's a zero-sum game. Authority, legitimacy, etc. Authority means legitimate power. Power can be coercive. We have seen three different authorities also, right? And then functionalist, it's a variable sum game. You achieve the collective goals. Power is used for achievement of collective goals. Then Marxist, talking about coercive power, the ruling class domination. Michael Mann, four sources. Extensive, intensive power. Go through the four sources. French and Raven, five bases of power. Later, one more added, informational. Pareto, Mosca, they are the classical elite rule. That's the circulation of elite concept also we discussed. CWrightMills, power elite, the corporate, military, political nexus. They together enjoy the power. They together make the decisions. And pluralists like Dahl, Robert Dahl, Aron, they're talking about dispersed power. That there is a group competition. Cool. So this will give you, I think, a 360-degree understanding of power in Indian society sociologically. But this is a session which I'm completing in 15 to 20 minutes, but we have taken 4 sessions for this to complete in the actual class. And I think it's running around 15 pages of PDF. Go through that, cover it. This is just a summary of what we have done. So guys, again, if you're looking for any mentorship on sociology classes or test series, get in touch with us. We have the programs. See you there.